This is where passion meets positivity and optimism. In a world where bad news abounds, You Are Solid Gold with Michele Lau celebrates the good in our lives and the beauty in the hidden gems around us. Welcome to You Are Solid Gold. Here she is, international television host and QVC jewelry expert, Michele Lau.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to You Are Solid Gold, the travel edition with Michele Lau and our favorite travel companion, Tim Hennigan. Hey, Tim, nice to have you here again today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be back.
Well, people are so excited about the episodes that we do on YouTube and on our podcast, of course, together. And so when Tim and I were talking about not only this time of the year, which happens to be, summertime around the 4th of July, Memorial Day, that type of thing, but we get to talking about how people come to Boston, come to Cape Cod and the surrounding areas all year long. So over the course of the next half an hour or so, you're going to learn some of the history of Boston. You're going to see some of the places to visit some of the brand new hotels in the area, as well as some that are, very established. We're going to go to some of the restaurants. We're going to visit nearby attractions. Tim and I like to call it Boston Plus, right, Tim?
Absolutely.
So tell me about Boston. Why is it that you love it so dearly?
Boston is my home, and it is a city that means very much to me. I feel I belong here. It's part of me, and I like sharing it with other people. So
that's so nice. When you send somebody into a city, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. Like I remember the first time I went to Boston, I thought, how am I going to find my way around? Right. But you were explaining to me that it all lays out very logically.
And a couple of things to remember about Boston, at least the center of the city, it's unlike a lot of other American cities, very walkable. Boston was a 17th century city. In fact, a lot of Bostonians will say things like, should we walk or do we have time to drive?
Yeah, exactly. I noticed that when I was there too. And I noticed that it was set up kind of like 3 separate cities within one.
It is, the urban area of Boston is made up of Boston itself, and then you have the city of Cambridge, and you also have the city of Somerville. And to someone who doesn't live here, it looks like one large city, much like Budapest or Tampa St. Pete. So now the city is connected. Most people use the T to get around. And it is a very simple system. All you need is the Charlie card to get around. You can put value on it as you go, as much as you need. And there are several lines that take you through Boston. So you have the red line, so-called because it runs through Harvard, which color of Harvard is crimson. You have the
I never made this connection before. So the different colors actually connect to the, wow, okay.
Have a little bit of meaning. Now, we don't know if the meaning was attached after the colors were named or before, but they do have them now. The green line, because we have a park system in Boston called the Emerald Necklace. And the green line runs through the parks. The green line is, by the way, the oldest subway system in the United States. It was the first one. And then have the orange line, which takes you along what used to be called Orange Street and is now Washington Street. It was called Orange Street before the Revolution because it was named after the House of Orange or William of Orange or William and Mary. And then you have the blue line, which of course runs around the harbor.
This is so much fun. I never made those connections before. Thank you. Why is it that you find in your experience as a travel advisor, why is it that you find that people come to Boston? What is it that they're looking for?
It is, of course, something you want to share with your family. There's a lot of history, of course. This is where English-speaking Europeans really first laid claims, is the Massachusetts colony. Really, the beginning of the American War for Independence happened here. And this is something that you bring your children to and say, look, this is part of our history. And the history is very apparent here at all times. We live it, we breathe it, we barely notice it because it's part of our lives. And also because New England is a smaller area. Within the area, you have the very sophisticated city of Boston, You have the mountains in New Hampshire and Vermont. You have the Maine coastline, which is stunning. You have Cape Cod, which is anyone from New England will tell you a major part of their childhood is Cape Cod. And that is something that people come to every summer. We have the National Seashore, which is very beautiful here. So there's a lot to offer for the hiker, the sportsman, the art lover, the history buff.
Speaking of which, stop right there, because we talked about at the very beginning how we were going to touch on some of the history. I know that this place is very rich in battlefields and in historic occurrences. Could you give me kind of a highlight of some of them?
Boston was founded in 1630. So it's a very old city. A lot has happened here. You're going to find a lot of firsts here, as we say, the first subway line, the first public library, the Athenaeum, the first hints of independence from Great Britain. The Hanoverian monarchy in England began here. It's famously said by the English, "Why is it always Boston that must disturb the king's peace?" What happened right here? We'll talk about the very first battle of Lexington and Concord, which happened after some cannon were stolen from the king's forces and hidden in Concord, and followed out by the king's forces. They went by sea, as you know, in the Old North Church right here across the river. They were either going to go up Orange Street and march out of the city that way, or they were going to cross by sea, and that was going to be noted by two lanterns in the Old North Church.
Right. This sounds like Paul Revere.
And this was Paul Revere. Paul Revere is only one of the people. He's the most famous one because his name scanned more easily into the poem by Longfellow than any other. There's a standoff on a bridge between Lexington and Concord. Nobody knew what was going to happen at that moment. Everyone was English together. Everyone was a citizen or a subject of the crown up until that moment when a shot was fired. And it was the shot heard round the world. So the British forces, even though they were superior, were not expecting it, and they retreated. And they retreated from the town of Concord, or Lexington, and towns of Lexington and Concord. The siege of Boston began. And the siege had to be broken. And so they knew that they had to take two hills in order to take back control of the harbor and end the siege and be released from the tiny center of Boston, which was the north end of that time. The locals knew that this battle was going to take place, and they decided to fortify Bunker Hill. And they decided this at a place on Brattle Street in Cambridge, and they had something called the Safety Committee, and they sent 3 men out to Bunker Hill. They were given 1,000 men, and the men were John Prescott, John Gridley, and Israel Putnam. And in the middle of the night, as they were approaching Bunker Hill, they decided instead, without asking anyone's permission, to fortify Breed's Hill, where I'm sitting right now.
Wow.
And so the English, just on the other side of the river, heard them, saw what was going on early in the morning, and decided to attack prematurely. And this was June 17. And so the Battle of Bunker Hill happened.
If you're into battlegrounds, if you are into history and American history specifically, this is a wonderful vacation for you. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So let's jump ahead to 19th century Boston.
Then as you extend into 19th century Boston, the streets become wider. And you have boulevards. So you had, at the time, in 17th century Boston, the center of the city was the Common. Boston Common is the oldest, again, one of the many oldest public parks in the country. And at the end of it, you have the 19th century fairy tale looking public garden. It doesn't look like much if you're walking across the street between the two, but you can see the difference in style. Winston Churchill called it the most beautiful boulevard in the Western Hemisphere. And it leads out to a neighborhood called Jamaica Plain, where the Arboretum is. But we have continued, since Olmsted's contribution, we have also added 2 other well-known parks, which are Memorial Drive, which will run along the Cambridge side of the Charles River, and the Esplanade, which runs along the Boston side of the Charles River. We have also added what's called the Harbor Walk. So we have a law here that if you build along the harbor, part of that has to be dedicated to public space. So if you're a runner, or you are a bike rider, or you are just a walker, much of the city can be done in green or along waterway. So this is one of the things that I love about the city so much.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, in the Back Bay, another thing that is very interesting. So you have friends in Beacon Hill. That was the neighborhood after the revolution to live. And there was a very strict social structure. These were the captains of industry that they built these beautiful mansions on Beacon Hill, and they led a very sort of strict, upright life in their society. And as this became filled in, there became an interest in building larger palaces heading out toward the Fenway. And one of the leaders of this movement, who I'm going to talk about a little bit, is a woman called Isabella Stewart Gardner. And she was a lady that came from New York. Her origins were middle class, but her family became enormously wealthy as she was becoming marriageable age. And she married a man, one of the richest of the Boston Brahmins, called Jack Gardner. And she was a little bit unusual among the ladies of her society. She kept company with people that weren't necessarily approved of. Khalil Gibran, for instance, Oscar Wilde, Anders Zorn, the Swedish painter. She was a bit of a blue stocking. And
a bit of a what? A blue stocking?
A blue stocking.
What does that mean?
A bit of a rebel. She didn't visit the way the other ladies visit. Didn't always
I love it.
A very upright code of what all the other women wore. So she was a firebrand. And so she was the first off of Beacon Hill. And out in the Fenway, she built herself a copy of the Venetian Palace Barberini in Venice. She built herself a copy of this and created a museum for herself. It's one of my favorite places in the city.
You know what I love? And this is a golden nugget, everybody. This is one of those things that you don't get from everybody. This little nugget that Tim just gave you is an off the beaten path, not normally visited museum that really can give you not only a lot of history, but it really sort of lends you into living at the time. So I like this. This is a great place to visit. Again, it's called the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, correct?
Exactly. Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. She built it as her home, but she also built it with the view that when she died, it would be a museum.
Love it.
And her will was very strict about what could be nothing could be moved after her death. So all the paintings had to be in the same place. The lighting has to be a certain way. There was a provision left in her will to build an extension, which was a bit more freeform, which has only recently been completed.
Oh, wow.
So she went to Europe and she bought out all of Europe. It's one of the more important private collections in the United States. It's very much to her taste. And another thing that happened in the 1990s, and there was recently a documentary on Netflix about this, was that one of the greatest art thefts in American history took place there.
Really? Wow.
It was in the 1990s, and some policemen showed up at the door, knocked on the door of the museum. The guard let them in, and they weren't really policemen, and they tied up the security staff.
Wow.
And they robbed some of the most important pieces in the collection, including Rembrandt's only seascape, were stolen.
Oh my goodness! Wow!
And because you can't move the art, you still have they were cut out of the frame, so the frames are still there, and the wallpaper is a lighter behind the frame. So you go and see the empty frames as part of the museum. Collection is still very important.
You know, speaking of museums, there's a number of different types of museums in Boston. Like Boston is so rich in this type of thing. Could you recommend a few of the others?
Well, of course, we have the very famous Museum of Fine Arts. Another one that you might want to visit is the Athenaeum, which is the oldest public library in the city, in the country, also on Beacon Hill. The Harvard museums, right in the middle of Harvard, they have several museums which have very important collections of the Chinese, ancient Greek and Roman, Asian, and modern art. The Institute for Contemporary Art has is in South Boston, but also has a building in East Boston that you can travel between on their own private shuttle.
Oh, how nice.
By water. The List Visual Arts Center at MIT is another one. the Museum of the Modern Renaissance. It's a very quirky museum. It was a building from the Masonic Lodge for a long time. And these two very quirky Russian artists have taken it over and painted the entire thing inside and outside in Russian folkloric style. And another one of my favorites is also in Somerville, and that's called the Museum of Bad Art.
Of bad art?
The Museum of Bad Art.
Oh, I've got to go see that.
You've got to, and it's a lot of fun because it has to be original. It has to be art that was made in earnest by people that wanted to, were trying to make real art, but it just didn't succeed.
Hey,
and one
all
of my
art is beautiful. There's always a reason for whatever you create. And I think that would be fascinating to see.
Well, yeah, they actually challenged a couple of years ago. They challenged one summer the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston to a softball game. and they said that, well, the winner gets to choose a piece from the loser's collection and add it to their own collection. So surprisingly, I don't know why the Museum of Fine Arts did not accept this challenge. So
yeah, I don't know why they would. I think it actually would have been very fun to watch and probably could have been a good fundraiser as well.
Well, yeah, but they didn't want to risk their collection. I think there was an imbalance of worth or value involved.
Some of the things you were talking about were really resonating with me because I've been there. I mean, I've been to the Harvard Museum. I would like to recommend that to our viewers and our listeners today because it was really just a great experience, even just to be on campus and to feel that history and to sit in the courtyard with all those grand buildings surrounding and take the picture next to the statue sitting on the bench like every tourist does, right? But it was just so fun. And then you spoke a lot about Beacon Hill during the history segment. One of the reasons I love staying in Beacon Hill and or staying near Beacon Hill, or at the very least going for a visit, is the Freedom Trail. You know, that is something that, you know, you can do where you can take a literal walk through history. And so that's just another idea for you as you do explore the history of Boston. We spent a lot of time talking history today because really there is so much to see and so much to learn, and it would be really impolite not to do that on a visit to, you know, Boston virtually like this, because it's just so important. But there are many things to do. But if you happen to be a history buff, if you happen to love museums, which is one of the reasons I love making periodic visits to Boston. And obviously, Tim, I can see the passion and hear the passion in your voice. Tim, when you and I got together initially and started to plot and plan how we were going to lay out this virtual trip to Boston, one of the things that really struck me in speaking to you is how excited and how lit up you got in talking about the new hotels and how things are booming in Boston. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I'm going to focus on three that are brand new. And the first of these is at the very bottom of Beacon Hill on Charles Street, right across from the Esplanade, and it's called the Whitney. And it was made out of an old 19th century building that was a place where nurses who worked at Mass General Hospital to live. And next to it was an empty parking lot. So they built a new building. So you've got new and old combined together just at the foot of Beacon Hill. Really easy access to the Esplanade along the river if you want to go running or biking. And then you're in this old historical building with all the comforts of brand new. It has a great little courtyard for drinks and bars, and there's a nice little restaurant. And so if you're a fan of Beacon Hill, well, you do have 15 Beacon, which is historic and wonderful. Now you also have the Whitney. So I strongly recommend that.
So it sounds very boutique-y, very intimate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it's the only boutique-y one I'm going to talk about.
See, I love that.
The other two new ones are grand, fabulous hotels.
All right. So tell me about a grand, fabulous one.
Okay. Now we have the new Four Seasons, which is #1 Dalton Street. We still have the old Four Seasons in the Back Bay along the Common, which is classic and beautiful. They've built a new Four Seasons, which is one of the tallest buildings in the city. And its footprint is the shape of a guitar pick.
Stop it. Really?
What's really nice is you have these rounded edges and it's all glass.
Oh, wow.
So the further up you go, you can see as far as the Blue Hills, you can see out toward the harbor. It's right next to the Christian Science Center. So you're looking over I.M. Pei's reflecting fountain and the famous dome of the Christian Science Center. You're at the very end of the Back Bay, very close to the Fenway. And just everywhere you are, the city is spilling in around you because it's all window.
Are you a baseball guy?
I am a baseball guy. We haven't talked about Fenway Park, have we?
Well, it's come up a couple of times in the history and also now with the hotels. So if I were going to make a trip to Fenway and I wanted to really have a spectacular time, the Four Seasons sounds like a really good place to stay in close proximity to Fenway Park.
It is close by. The closest one I will mention is the Commonwealth Hotel, which is right across the street, which is a wonderful destination as well, but it's not new. This one is also very convenient. It's also right behind the Prudential Shopping Mall. So if it's a cold day, you can walk all through the Back Bay, through the Prudential and Copley Square. And one of the most beautiful squares in the city is Copley Square. And by the way, I do want to mention, because I hear you can always tell a tourist when they say Copley, it's Copley Square.
Note to self. This is why we need Tim Hennigan, by the way, is he can tailor your trips to what you have interest in. I love shopping. I love history. So, Tim and I got along right from the get-go, but he has got a wide breadth of knowledge as far as, what's available for activities in the area, if ball games, all of that type of thing. So he's more than just booking a place to stay or booking an airline ticket. What he does, I'm going to brag on you for just a minute, is he creates this entire experience. And it doesn't have to be over the top. It can also be very manageable. What I've loved, because, I'm a modest person, I can't sometimes, take that Hollywood style, but Tim always has an alternative, and it's always been just fantastic. Now, in case you are just joining us, you are listening to You Are Solid Gold with Michele Lau. My special guest today is Tim Hennigan. And if you missed the first part of this broadcast, you better go back and listen to the beginning, because there's all kinds of goodies. The first portion, we talked about the history of Boston Plus, a history of the Boston Cape Cod kind of region, and touched on some of the high spots. Now we've moved through some of the hotels that are either brand new or very well established in the area that Tim personally recommends. Next, we gotta eat. I'm getting hungry after this virtual trip. So where would you recommend that we go as far as restaurants are concerned, Tim?
Well, if you're a baseball person, one little pub that people love is called the Bleacher Bar. If you ever watch a ball game and you look out at the Green Monster in Fenway, there's a window. There's a big plate glass window that looks out onto Fenway Park, onto the grounds, and that's called the Bleacher Bar. So even if you go there when it's not baseball season, you can see Fenway Park even covered in snow, or even if you don't have tickets to a game, you can have a drink. You might have to take turns standing by the window, but there's a really lovely place to hang out. So that's
just so unusual, isn't it, Tim, that people would want to go to a baseball park even when there wasn't a game happening, because there's so much history and it's so fantastic. There is an energy in Fenway that is undeniable. It is, in my opinion, one of the greats. It's a place that I just really get into when I'm there, even though I don't follow baseball all season long. I think they made it 2 innings too long, personally.
There's two old ones that I want to talk about. One of them is called Marley Ave, which is in the city center of Boston. And it is one of the older restaurants in the city. Really comfortable place, really great menu, very close to the theater district. In fact, when we went to see Hamilton in Boston, they had a special menu for Hamilton.
What a great place to see Hamilton.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
All the history is right there. And there's another one here in my neighborhood called the Warren Tavern. Again, it's just a pub. And they do make a great fish taco, and they have great hamburgers. I even have a frequent flyer card here. But it's known because this is a place where George Washington ate, and Paul Revere. This is one of the oldest pubs in the country, and it's worth seeing, and it's steps away from the Bunker Hill Monument and steps away from the Constitution, so it's a must on the Freedom Trail. I live very close to the Navy Yard and very close to the Constitution. There are 2 restaurants. One of them is here in Charlestown in the Navy Yard, and it is called Pier 6, and there's another restaurant called the Real House, which is across the bay near the airport in East Boston, close to the ICA. And these 2 restaurants have their own water shuttle in between. So you can travel, you can have your salad in one, take the little water shuttle across the other, and sort of enjoy a little cruise in between.
That sounds so awesome.
And we do it all the time. And tourists do tend to overlook Boston Harbor and the islands, but the Boston Tourist Authority is very interested. There's a lot of boats out to the different islands in the harbor that could be visited. And the other one is in Cambridge, and I just like this one because it has one of the most beautiful courtyards And this is more of an upscale restaurant, great for dates and anniversaries. It's called Oleana and has one of the more romantic, maybe the most romantic courtyard in the urban area.
Oh, no, note
So
to self,
those are the
Oleana.
ones that I wanted to touch upon.
Wow. Wow. Well, if I may interrupt, and I know you could go on and on about the great restaurants in Boston. They're known for their wonderful restaurants and their seafood, and just the whole experience is amazing. But we promised everybody Boston Plus. So let's take a moment and maybe discover some of the plus. Let's say that we want a little bit outside of Boston, maybe not the Cape exactly, but something different. What would you recommend?
So everyone does Boston. They'll do Boston plus one place. You could go to the towns of Concord and Lexington, which are a half an hour away. Right there, you have, of course, Walden Pond, made famous by Thoreau. And also right by, there's a place called the DeCordova Museum and Sculpture Park, which is a great place to go, especially in the fall, as the leaves are changing, and just bring a picnic and walk among the art outside. And
wow, that sounds amazing.
Really lovely, and you can visit that. You can also go to Lenox, where we have the Tanglewood in the summer, which is the home of Boston Pops in the summer, to hear some music. I like the Wheatley, which is right at the end of the Tanglewood lawn. It was given by an early 19th century industrialist to his daughter as a reward for marrying a count, or maybe he was a prince, for bringing a title into the family. So he built her an Italian, a Renaissance style mansion just beyond Tanglewood. And now that's a lovely hotel.
I bet.
The other one that you might like is more of a federal style looking mansion. And this is where you find Canyon Ranch Spa. And that might be something that would appeal to you as well.
Canyon Ranch Spa.
Canyon Ranch.
Listen, Canyon Ranch has been featured in literally all of the spa publications. This is a legendary place to go visit. They're known not only for their wonderful surroundings, but they're known for the products that they use at Canyon Ranch Spa. So yeah, let's go there. What I love about what you've put together for us today is you've taken us in the unusual places. You haven't just taken us to the traditional touristy spots, although we have some of that here because everybody needs to see some of it. You've really shown us some of the golden nuggets, some of the hidden surprises. I can't wait next time I go to try some of the restaurants that you were talking about.
Well, a place in Vermont that's very famous. It's called Twin Farms. It's very famous for those in the know. This is an all-inclusive resort, and it used to be the farm belonging to Sinclair Lewis. And you don't stay in rooms here. You stay in your own little house. This
is the place you had recommended to Ron and I, right? When we were looking for a place. I remember you talking about this. Ooh, tell more.
And I got to visit it last winter in the snow. And it's good in every season because they have skiing, or they have hay rides, or they have hiking and fishing in the summer. And each of these houses that you get, and they're rather full-size houses, are designed by actually Andy Warhol's former partner.
Really?
And they have, we stayed in the treehouse room. So there's an arboreal theme going on, and there are all different themes in each of the rooms, and you have your own, and it's like staying in a little village with your own little pub just above the spa in between.
No.
It's a very special place with a lot of different activities, and it's nestled just quite close to Woodstock into the Vermont countryside. And it's
next time I ask you where to go, remind me that I want to go to Twin Farms, will you?
You do want to go to Twin Farms. I want to go back to Twin Farms.
It sounds great.
I also want to mention there's a similar place in Maine called Hidden Pond, where they've taken several middle-class 19th century houses and moved them around a pool area with a very famous restaurant called Earth in between. And it's steps away from the water, but you also have a pond there, and you get your own house. And they've also just renovated the Cliff House outside of Ogunquit, Maine, which is another lovely spot that has become one of the more important resorts in Maine. So that's another one we want to visit. I want to touch on Rhode Island as well. Ocean House, beautiful old grand 19th century hotel that's been recently refurbished with all the latest as well. So if you want to go down and visit the Newport Mansions, for instance, or go to the jazz festival, this is a very good choice as well.
So if you do love festivals, you've got a couple of really good ideas, you know, whether it's seeing the Pops in Boston or whether it's making the travel out a little bit. You've got us covered if we happen to be the kind of people that like to go and do that, which I do. So that would be a lot of fun. So Tim, do a lot of your customers, do they spend a few days in Boston and then head out to something like the Rhode Island Ocean House or to Twin Farms? Like, do they break up their vacation, or do people tend to stay in one spot?
No, they'll usually do two destinations. They'll do the urban experience of Boston, and then they'll add to one of these. But the most popular, of course, and in my opinion, one of the most beautiful and comforting places on earth is Cape Cod. And anyone who is from this area has memories of the Cape. It speaks of soft serve ice cream and beautiful beaches and fried clams, and it's just a place of safety and innocence and childhood, and just it's salt sea air, and it's beautiful. One way to get there is to take the fast ferry to P-Town or Provincetown. Provincetown is by itself on the Cape. It has a very unique history. It is where pilgrims, as we call them, settled in Plymouth, Massachusetts. They landed in Provincetown and considered Provincetown, but there wasn't enough fresh water. And then at the beginning of the wars in the 20th century, the artists and writers who would normally have gone to Europe, to the continent, instead settled, they chose Provincetown. So Eugene O'Neill, for instance, Truman Capote, for instance, Marlon Brando actually auditioned for A Streetcar Named Desire. He hitchhiked to Provincetown. Around these thinkers and writers came, of course, the gay community. So Provincetown became a mecca in the 60s and 70s and 80s and on up for the gay and lesbian community, LGBTQ community, as sort of a safe haven resort.
I didn't know
and
that.
You go down, there's a very funky feeling, and you love jewelry. This is a great place to buy original works that you can't find anywhere else, paintings, sculptures, all of these things. And you're in this quaint little town, and it has the feel of a village, but it's unlike any other town on Cape Cod. And
I've got to check it out.
Ferry from Boston. It's a lot to do. So during the pandemic, especially, I myself wanted to get out of the house. So I went to the Cape, and one of the places I visited, and anyone from Massachusetts will tell you a story about this place, the Chatham Bars Inn. So
the Chatham Bars. You mean bars?
Yeah.
Bars.
Chatham Bars Inn. Yes, Chatham Bars Inn.
Got it.
Everyone, it's an institution. People love it. And once again, it's you have a main inn and a main hotel, but around the inn you have all of these cottages that they either built or bought surrounding the area on either side of the street and along the water. So especially during COVID, it was a great place because we got one of the little cottages or houses that we stayed in right on the water.
Wow.
So quiet, so peaceful. It is a grand hotel, but it's still the Cape, and it feels like the Cape. And they have the lobster bakes, and they have the different activities, and you can walk to the point. And my favorite place is the Octagon House, which is a perfectly round house that you can rent for your family right there.
Cool.
As a single family, right on the water. It's stunning. Also with the Cape, you have the islands, the famous islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And in fact, in honor of this today, I have worn my Black Dog t-shirt, which you can't really see, because Martha's Vineyard. So that's a famous thing. So we also visited a newly refurbished, stunning 5-star hotel called the Harbor View Hotel. And it's situated right in front of the old lighthouse, steps from the village of Edgartown. This is a very exciting new addition to places to stay. They really want that 5-star experience, and Harborview delivered.
You said recent in the last 5 years, recent in the last couple of years. It was much needed, and it was done lovingly. And so there is there's a standard of quality in Martha's Vineyard.
And what's nice about it is all of this, Chatham Bars Inn, the Harborview Hotel, these are casual elegance. So you're there to
Comfortable.
relax. You're there to to breathe. You're there for comfort. Nothing's too fancy. Everything's very familial, and everything's very safe, and everything feels very close. And again, just a great little ferry ride from Woods Hole. So that's the other one that I'm really strongly recommending.
What I love about this whole itinerary that we've been talking about, or this whole trip and sampling a little bit here and there as far as history and restaurants and places to stay, is that the places are vibrant and alive all 4 seasons of the year. I mean, this is something that you immediately think 4th of July, Memorial Day, whatever. But really, these are little nuggets, little treasures, and places to make golden memories all year long.
It's a great place to bring your family, and your kids will never forget it. Even in deepest, darkest February, there is a season here, and there are
But there
things
is
to
something
do.
about the Cape in the summer, there really is. So really, winter, spring, summer, fall, it's really got a little bit of everything. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I just so enjoy these segments. If any of you would like to hear about a specific area of the world, or want to do something specific, you can drop myself a note at hello@youaresolidgold.com, or I'm going to put Tim's contact information in the notes as always, so that you can reach out to Tim to plan your next big trip or little getaway. See, Tim does it all. You're going to really enjoy yourself. Tim, you are solid gold. And thank you, my partner in crime. Until next time, stay safe and keep shining. I'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us on You Are Solid Gold. We hope that you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Would you please subscribe, like, and share this episode? If you know of a person, place, or thing that is a hidden gem that we should feature on Solid Gold with Michele Lau, please submit it for consideration at hello@youaresolidgold.com. Now, get out there and shine.